Today I'm going to share with you the 9 most asked about evergreens in my garden. Hi, it's Steph, and let's address the skeleton in the room. My son just got this in for Halloween, and it got me thinking that in about another month, we will already start doing some fall planting. Now, we just passed peak summer, but your nurseries and garden centers are already receiving inventory for fall planting. And often when I do my garden tours, I'm usually showing my flowers in my flower beds, but more often than not, I will get questions about some of the evergreens that I have planted. And I thought that I would compose this video to show you the most asked about evergreens in my garden so that you can look for these at your local garden centers and nurseries for planting this fall. Here in my main walkway bed, I have 3 evergreens right in this corner that I often get questions about. So these are 3 of the 9. And the first one would be, in no particular order, this gold Mop Cypress. Now this is a shrub that is an evergreen and very easily found at your local box store, nursery, or garden center. Now this was a shrub that I have limbed up and made a small topiary tree. The reason for that is because it got too large for its space. Now this shrub grows anywhere from 3 to 5 feet tall and wide. And when it got too large for this space, I didn't want to just pull it out. So I experimented with limbing it up and turning it into a small topiary tree. I actually have a video on my channel on how I did that, and I will link it below in the description of the video as well as in the pinned comment. Now this has a really beautiful golden color, and in order for it to have this beautiful golden color, it does need full sun. You can see that underneath, the branches that don't get sun or that are shaded are more green. So if you have this planted in a spot that is more shady or only part sun, it might take on more of a green coloring. So full sun to get this beautiful golden color. Has a really beautiful kind of wispy arching habit, and I just think is really pretty and graceful. Speaking of graceful, the next tree or evergreen that I often get questions about is this Hanoi Cypress, and this is the Gracilis nana. It is a tree or evergreen that gets to be about 6 to 8 feet in height and about 5 to 8 feet in width. You can see that in the last 12 years, it has gotten quite large, and it is really beautiful. It has a gorgeous texture and this really pretty kind of arching, another graceful habit tree. I absolutely love it. It makes a wonderful backdrop to this bed, and I would say that this is probably the evergreen that I get the most questions about. Hanoi Cypress come in many different sizes. You can find dwarf varieties as well as some varieties that get quite large. They also come in different colors. They have green varieties as well as golden varieties. I actually have several in my garden, but this is the beauty that I get asked about the most. I planted this Hanoi Cypress Gracilis nana as a small baby, and it has grown quite a bit in the last several years. It is planted here in full sun, and it is hardy in USDA growing zones 4 through 8. And this beauty I also often get questions about is the Forever Goldie Arborite. It is a really beautiful variety of Arborite that you can see kind of grows in an upward habit. Now this one gets to be about 3 to 5 feet in diameter and can grow upwards of 10 to 12 feet in height. This beautiful golden color actually gets kind of bronze in the winter, so it adds even another layer of interest. It is also pretty deer resistant, although it is planted pretty far back here in this bed, so the deer couldn't get to it anyhow, but it is listed as deer resistant. It is hardy in USDA growing zones 4 through 9, and it also loves full sun. And this beauty here behind me is the Blues Weeping Blue Spruce. It is a Colorado blue spruce with a weeping habit that stays pretty compact. It's also slow growing, which is great so that it doesn't get too large too quickly. I love this blue color in an evergreen. I think it adds so much visual interest. And this one here is planted in full sun, but I have another one that is planted in part shade that we will take a look at. Here we are in my Japanese maple garden, which is a part shade garden, and you can see that I have another weeping blue spruce, and it is doing great. The weeping blue spruce is hardy down to negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit in zones 2 through 8. And right back here, I have another evergreen that I'm often asked questions about, and it is the golden hemlock Duchess. This is the eastern hemlock golden Duchess. This is a beautiful evergreen that in the winter will take on more of a golden appearance when it gets more sun and the deciduous trees behind it have dropped their leaves. This has a moderate growth habit, and it gets to be 3 to 5 feet wide and 3 to 4 feet tall. So it is wider than it is tall. but I have another eastern hemlock planted in my garden. And while this one is the Duchess and grows shorter and wider, I also have the Duke that grows a little taller and stays more narrow. Let's go take a look. And here is the Golden Duke Eastern Hemlock. This one has also a slow growth habit and it grows more narrow. This one gets to be only 2 to 3 feet in width and 6 to 10 feet in height. It also has this beautiful golden color and loves full sun to part sun. And this is the evergreen that started my love of evergreens. This was the very first one that we planted here when this was a brand new landscape. And this is a weeping blue Atlas cedar, and it is in a serpentine shape, which means that it was trained into an S. And while you can't really see the structure now because it's been about 12 years and it is pretty grown at this point, it has a really beautiful shape. Now, it is really easy to prune because sometimes you'll get these branches that kind of stick out in odd places. So you just go in and you prune them off. But it has a really beautiful blue color and it does prefer full sun. It'll get the most vibrant blue color in full sun. And because it is a weeping variety, again, it stays pretty compact, which is great because that way you don't have to worry about it outgrowing its space too quickly. I actually loved the Weeping Blue Atlas Cedar so much that I picked up a second one. I had originally purchased the first one at a local nursery, and by chance I was at a local box store a couple of years later and I found another one. So I picked it up to add to my garden as well. And this beauty is a weeping Norway spruce. I've had this planted here for about 10 years and it is beautiful. It is a weeper, so you can control how wide it gets because it is very easily pruned. As far as the height goes, it depends how tall you stake it, but on average, they can get anywhere from 12 to 15 feet in height. You can see that we did stick a bamboo stick in there and keep trying to train the leader up. And then when you stop pushing it upward, it will start weeping downward. So it has a really beautiful shape. Now this here is a super hardy evergreen, hardy in zones 3 through 8, and it is planted in full sun. And this large, gorgeous tree right behind me is a Colorado blue spruce. Now, blue spruces are not only super cold tolerant and hardy, they're also deer resistant, which is great because we deal with a lot of deer in our garden. In fact, all of the shrubs and evergreens that I've showed you today are pretty much all deer resistant, which is a huge requirement for us because of the deer pressure that we get. But the story with this tree I've mentioned on my channel before is a cautionary tale of not planting a tree or evergreen too close to your home. About 12 years ago, when I was a new gardener and I had a new from scratch landscape, I planted this tree here because it was called a baby blue eyes blue spruce. And I was under the assumption incorrectly that it was a dwarf, and it is not. It has gotten much too large for this corner and will eventually, unfortunately, have to be removed. So a cautionary tale of mine hopefully serves as a lesson to you to really pay attention to the growth size on those tags. Whatever they say, believe them, and even add a little bit more space because over time, evergreens, if they are happy, will grow. This Colorado blue spruce is planted in full sun and has the most beautiful, vibrant blue color. It's also a great habitat for birds. In the spring, we get a ton of birds that will nest in this tree, and you can actually see some dark spots where there's some openings in the branches, and that is where the birds fly in and out. And a bonus evergreen that I often get questions about is this beautiful backdrop of green giant arborvitaes. This in landscaping is what you call a borrowed view. They're actually planted in my neighbor's yard, but they make a beautiful backdrop for my garden. Now the fall is the perfect time to plant a living fence or privacy hedge of green giant or emerald green arborvitaes in your garden because the temperatures are generally cooler, which means less stress for your plants, and there's usually more moisture through rainfall in the fall, which also means less watering on your part. I actually made a video comparing the differences between the green giant arborvitae and the emerald green arborvitae, which I will link below. Well, that is my list of the 9 most asked about evergreens in my garden by you, the viewers. So hopefully this answered some of your questions or maybe gave you some ideas to jot down to add to your garden this fall and look for them at your local nurseries and garden centers. If you enjoyed this video, I would love it if you could give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, I would love it if you would consider subscribing. It is free to do so, and all it does is allow YouTube to recommend my content to you the next time that you sign on to YouTube. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I'll catch you in the next one.